Hello, everybody. My name is Deb Coviello, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Drop-In CEO live talk media. And I have the pleasure of having as a guest with me today, Dr. Stanley Ward. Dr. Ward really cares about relationships and results. And for the leader that he's working with, it's not just about the results and success in the workplace, but it's also at home. So, welcome to the conversation, Stan.
Thank you, Deb. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, for those of you that don't know Stan, and you definitely have to get to know him, he is an expert, I would say, in burnout, but I think it's so much more than the topic of burnout, but it's really about those signs and symptoms that a leader, a person is experiencing who is highly talented, have done very well in their career. So, we want to celebrate those successes, but sometimes things change or things start to get heavier and more demanding in one's life that once you were maybe a rock star successful and now you're entering a phase of what you're doing that things just don't feel right anymore. You're starting to get burned out, and the people around you are starting to feel that. So, I'd like to just hand it off to you, Stan. Can you just tell us a little bit from your experience and what you've seen in others? What are some of those symptoms and signs that people are starting to experience so that people that are watching can start looking for them for themselves?
Yeah, good question. And I'd really like to start by distinguishing between burnout and worn out, because I think the word burnout's gotten kind of fuzzy. It's used a lot, and so think of the difference between the two as a gasoline engine, the engine of your car. And when you are running that engine and you run out of gasoline, what happens? The car kind of goes bum, 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 and stops, right? And in order to go again, you simply refuel it and you're off to the races. So that's being worn out. Rest, refresh, refuel, off to the races. And that's not uncommon as we move into any new skill set. We know that actually, at first, we're going to see performance dip to a certain extent, but usually we press through it, things start to take off, it takes less energy from us, and we move on. Burnout is different. Burnout is like running that engine without oil. And because what's interesting about that is you can continue to run that engine for a time once it's run out of oil, but as it's running, it actually damages itself until eventually the engine seizes up and ceases to function. That's burnout. So, the first thing I would want to do for folks is say, okay, check in. Is this about just needing rest and refreshment, or is this bigger? So with that, there's really three things I'd encourage people to watch for in themselves. One, check your energy. We know that one feature of burnout is emotional exhaustion. Two, look at your sense of connectedness or relationships. We know that depersonalization, feeling like a robot, just showing up, going through the motions, being disconnected from people and purpose. That's a second dimension of burnout. And then the third thing is feeling ineffective, which you mentioned that kind of creeps up on us, especially as we move into new challenges. I'm thinking there of Marshall Goldsmith's great quote that what got you here won't get you there.
Those are such important points. And I think everybody, first of all, just needs to take a breath and reflect and simply take inventory. To your point, I love what you said there about being worn out and burnout. And I think all of us as high performers will get worn out because we just love what we're doing and we're so focused on the mission, whether it's for work, for our personal life, or even community. I mean, sometimes those that may not be in the work environment but volunteer a lot, they too can get worn out and potentially burnt out if we don't manage all of that. But I think what you say is so important is as leaders, we just need to be able to pause and reflect on that. So for a person that's feeling burnt out, we want to try to avoid that. But if they get to that point and they have that self-awareness, what advice would you give them, or what would you start to discuss with them as things to be able to recognize, or maybe even to start to change?
Yeah, again, on the recognizing space, I want to follow that with an illustration, and then we can talk about three tips to make some change happen. I'm thinking as far as recognizing the difference between burnout and worn out. I had a conversation with a leader at a large institution who mentioned to me that he had gone on a 2-week vacation, basically to the Caribbean. He came back feeling no more rested than when he left. And that was a hint to him that something was going on. What was fascinating there is that he found later when he reconnected with a personal project of his in the organization that was really significant to him, really meaningful. As he re-engaged with that work, he found that to be more helpful than actually having a 2-week vacation. So that's speaking to that issue of reconnecting to purpose, passion, the things that energize you. And so I want to use that to kind of lead into this next piece about the advice, because we're gonna deal with energy. That's so important because we know that emotional exhaustion really is one of the lead indicators that a person's moving into burnout. So first of all, a really simple tip. So as you're dealing with frustrations, whatever the cause may be, ask yourself, how much energy am I giving this issue? Excuse me. And then ask yourself, how much is it worth? Often we find ourselves giving way more energy to things than they deserve. Actually, I had a call just last week with a woman leader. She's a business owner. And she said just making that one shift alone for her has transformed her workplace experience. And we really found that her workload or sense of workload was one of the things that was causing her burnout. So just making that simple shift. Two, and this is huge, it's more complicated, but please stop relying on fight or flight energy. Stop relying on just adrenaline alone to get things done. I'm
We may have just lost a little bit of connection, Stan. So we
Oh,
were just
okay.
talking about introducing fight or flight.
Yeah, thank you. So be aware of that fight or flight state. Just having a conversation with a CEO, in fact, this week, who has realized that he has been relying on fight or flight energy, that sense of adrenaline, in order to get things done. And he's been doing this for a long time. And there's a cumulative result to that. It's impacting his health, it's impacting his family life, as well as his effectiveness in the organization. We're finding that by putting new structures in place, is in new processes in place, and even new mindsets, and that's where coaching really can help. It's not about just the tactical piece, but it's about this transformational piece. By working with him in that longer process, we're starting to see some relief there. And it's even expressing itself. He realized he was really micromanaging his executive team. He was really in their way for their success, and that burnout was beginning to flow downstream, so that his executive team was starting to show signs of it too. So this is a really big one to address. And then the third piece, and this is a simple one, but it also speaks to energy. Look at your calendar for the rest of the week. Um, Today's Wednesday. You may be watching this later as a recording, but just look at the calendar for the rest of the week and make sure there is at least one item, one project, one meeting on that calendar that rests or refreshes you, one meeting that re-engages you in your work, one meeting that gives you energy because you're looking forward to working on that project or meeting with that individual. Bonus points if you can find one of those a day. That will transform your workplace experience.
That is such great advice. And, I will tell you also, I had to learn that the hard way myself. When we talk in terms of energy, I just got back from a week's vacation in Florida. And yes, there was beautiful sunshine down in Florida. I was able to rest and get some sleep, but I also worked, and I was working on my book, The CEO's Compass, getting you back on track. People that may get to a place of burnout, a CEO, and they're very successful, but sometimes they need to, first of all, look inside and have that awareness that something has to change, and maybe partner with a resource, yourself, myself, to help you get back on track. I loved doing that work, and I worked really hard. But not only was I a little bit tired when I was done, but oh my, exhilarated for the accomplishment and seeing the end in sight. Really great advice, and finding that time on your calendar to do the work that energizes you. So important. So Go on. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and even from a career perspective, I know for myself as I've made some different transitions in life, when there are seasons where I've looked at that calendar and there's nothing there that I'm looking forward to, and I start to have that internal conversation of, I don't know if I've got the energy to fight the fights that are ahead of me.
Yeah.
That's something to really pay attention to as well.
Yeah, and I can say that, and again, I think there's great courage in acknowledging my last role. I loved it. Love the role, elevating people, the work that we did. But there were times where I did dread it. I would procrastinate. My calendar was full of obligations, getting up early, staying up late, just to try to keep up. And anytime I would want to do something creative, I let the stuff that, I don't know, drained my energy really take something away. And so that's why I love the work that I'm doing now. I get to work with leaders, and if nothing else, help them to delegate, have the right organization to do the work so they don't have to be drained, and work less, have a better life, spend more time doing the things they love, and they become better leaders because of that. So great advice.
Yeah, if I may, just to build on that, what you're
Yeah.
doing is so important because we know that under prolonged stress, that leader's brain loses its ability to do executive functioning. So that's why
Yeah.
what you're talking about is so important.
All right. So I am excited for having this conversation with you because you are an expert in helping leaders to understand where they are and where they need to go to better perform in their life and in their career. I too helps leaders. I'm writing a book right now, The CEO's Compass, getting you back on track. All I want to do is be able to serve you and be able to get you back on track so you don't have to spend so much time doing the things you don't enjoy and spending more time with the things that you absolutely love. So Stan, you have some amazing resources, things that if people don't connect with you right away, but there's things that you have. What are some resources that they can reach out to, or how can maybe they connect with you to learn more and live a more fulfilling, less stressful life?
The simplest way to connect with me is go to my business website, coachingforinfluence.com. That's CoachingForinfluence, Coaching for Influence, all spelled out.com. Go to the blog, and there you'll find a host of resources, audio, visual. I've also just completed a PDF on leadership burnout in the workplace that you can download there. So please start there. And then, to whatever extent you find that helpful, I'd love to continue the conversation after that.
And you've written a book as well. I've read it. The title, what is it again?
Yeah, how to beat burnout for yourself, your family, and your team. And it's really written for those who struggle with this idea of self care. I know I do. And I found that simply by changing my motivation and realizing, as you mentioned at the start of our conversation, that burnout impacts not only me, but the people around me, both work, home, and in the community.
All right. So, for those of you who are watching or listening to this now or a little bit later, if this resonated with you, we would sincerely appreciate if you could share this with your community, because I know, if nothing else, the conversation that Stan and I have just had may help somebody simply to think differently. And again, if you too recognize this in yourself and you just need the support to help you get through and live a more successful personal life as well as a career, please reach out to Stan or myself. And I wish everybody a successful day. Stan, thank you so very much for spending some time with me.
It's been a pleasure. Be well.
Be well.